In 1971, a Virginia Slims ad aired at 11:59 at night on NBC, and then cigarette commercials vanished from American television forever. The tobacco industry had quietly engineered the ban themselves. Here are 30 banned commercials from the 70s that scientists now say were genius. On January 2, 1971, every cigarette commercial in America disappeared from television and radio. President Nixon had signed the Public Health Cigarette Smoking Act the previous April, and the public celebrated what looked like a massive victory for public health. But the tobacco industry wanted the ban. Since 1967, the FCC's Fairness Doctrine had forced networks to air free anti-smoking ads alongside cigarette commercials. A 1972 study found those counter ads cut consumption by 531 cigarettes per person per year, while tobacco ads only boosted it by 95. The industry was losing on its own airwaves. By supporting the ban, tobacco companies killed the legal requirement for anti-smoking messages, saved over $200 million in annual spending, and shifted budgets to unregulated print. Smoking actually increased after the ban took effect. Scientists now call it one of the shrewdest corporate moves of the 20th century. A family board game called Husker Du ran television ads in the early 70s that looked perfectly innocent. Kids matched tiles, parents watched, the announcer encouraged everyone to buy. But hidden in the footage were single frames of text flashing too fast for the conscious mind. The message read, "Get it." Viewers sensed something felt off, and complaints reached the FCC. Investigators confirmed that Premium Corporation of America had embedded subliminal commands into the broadcast. An executive later admitted responsibility. The FCC declared in 1973 that subliminal techniques were contrary to the public interest, banning the practice from American airwaves. Decades later, brain imaging studies validated the concern. Images presented below conscious awareness still activate emotional processing centers and shape preference, even when the viewer has no idea anything was shown. National airlines put young flight attendants on camera, had them stare straight at the viewer and say, "I'm Cheryl, fly me." The double meaning was the entire point. Print versions showed the women in suggestive poses, and the National Organization for Women filed formal complaints, calling the campaign a license for passengers to harass crew on every flight. National did not flinch. Bookings climbed throughout the decade as the airline rotated different women through the same loaded script. Pan Am's acquisition of the company in 1980 finally killed the ads. Behavioral researchers have since studied why provocation sells so effectively. Ads that trigger strong emotional arousal, whether positive or negative, create deeper brand recall than neutral ones. Every protest generated free publicity worth more than the campaign's own budget. Between 1967 and 1970, the FCC's Fairness Doctrine forced American networks to air free anti-smoking spots alongside cigarette commercials. These were not gentle reminders. They showed the tar accumulation from a single pack, the slow narrowing of airways that no filter could prevent. A Marlboro cowboy would appear during a break, and minutes later, viewers saw what that smoke did to human tissue. The contrast was brutal, and smoking dropped roughly 7% in 3 years. Internal memos from Philip Morris and R.J. Reynolds confirmed that executives tracked every percentage point and understood the counter ads were winning. When the broadcast ban took effect in 1971, the Fairness Doctrine no longer applied to cigarettes. The anti-smoking PSAs vanished overnight. Consumption climbed almost immediately. The most effective public health campaign in American television history was shut down, not by the tobacco industry directly, but by the regulation designed to defeat it. If Big Tobacco manipulated the regulators, one liquor company allegedly tried to manipulate the viewer's unconscious mind. In 1973, researcher Wilson Bryan Key published Subliminal Seduction, claiming that a Gilbey's London Dry Gin print ad contained a hidden word spelled out in the ice cubes, a word tied to physical desire. The letters were invisible at a casual glance, but once pointed out, they became impossible to unsee. Gilbey's denied everything. The FTC investigated but took no action, partly because proving intent was impossible. Key's book sold millions of copies, and suddenly every American was squinting at ice cubes in liquor ads. Modern neuroscience has added a strange wrinkle. MRI studies show that emotionally charged images presented below conscious perception do activate the amygdala, influencing emotional responses without the viewer's awareness. Whether the Gilbey's ad was deliberate remains debated, but the fear behind the controversy turned out to be scientifically grounded. Every Saturday morning, American kids absorbed roughly 26 commercials per hour, mostly for sugar-loaded cereal. Tony the Tiger, Toucan Sam, and Count Chocula were designed to exploit how a developing brain processes color, repetition, and reward. General Mills and Kellogg's spent hundreds of millions targeting viewers who could not read a nutrition label. In 1978, FTC Chairman Michael Pertschuk proposed the KidVid rules, a ban on all advertising aimed at children under 8. The cereal and toy industries declared war. Lobbyists branded Pertschuk the national nanny, and Congress stripped the FTC of its rulemaking authority over children's ads in 1980. The ban died before it started. Child psychologists later confirmed what the FTC suspected. Kids under 8 cannot distinguish a commercial from a program. The mascots were wiring brand loyalty into brains that had no defense against the technique. Folgers ran ads throughout the decade featuring a fictional neighbor named Mrs. Olson, played by actress Virginia Christine. The script never changed. A young wife brewed terrible coffee, her husband grimaced, and the marriage appeared to wobble. Then Mrs. Olson arrived with a can of Folgers, and domestic order was restored. Christine played the part for over 20 years and became one of the most recognized faces in advertising. The premise was blunt. A woman's value at home depended on brewing decent coffee, and failure meant losing her husband's approval. Feminist critics called it degrading. Behavioral scientists now focus on a different detail. The ads used what researchers call the competent helper model, a trusted peer who solves your problem with one product. It is the same framework that influencer marketing runs on today, repackaged from a 1970s kitchen for the social media era. Wonder Bread told families it built strong bodies 12 ways. The commercials showed kids growing taller and running faster, all because their mothers chose the right loaf. The slogan was printed directly on the wrapper. In 1971, the FTC charged ITT Continental Baking with deceptive advertising, finding that Wonder Bread was no more nutritious than any other enriched white bread, and the 12 Ways claim had no scientific basis. The company received a cease and desist order. It was among the first major cases where a federal agency declared a household food brand's core message a fabrication. Continental Baking contested the ruling for years. Modern nutrition science has been blunter. Enriched white bread carries a glycemic index comparable to table sugar, and the synthetic vitamins added back to stripped flour replace a fraction of what whole grain provides. Millions of parents bought a slogan that meant nothing. Listerine ran ads for decades, claiming that gargling with mouthwash could prevent colds and sore throats. Families poured the burning amber liquid every winter, convinced it shielded them from illness. Warner Lambert had pushed this claim since the 1920s. In 1975, the FTC ruled the claims false and ordered something unprecedented. Warner Lambert was required to spend $10 million on corrective advertising, spots that explicitly stated Listerine did not prevent colds. The company fought to the Supreme Court and lost. For over a year, Listerine went on television and contradicted its own messaging. It remains the most dramatic corrective ad order in American regulatory history, and a case study in what happens when a brand's core promise turns out to be fiction. In a decade ruled by Coca-Cola and Pepsi, 7-Up did something marketing professors now consider brilliant. Instead of competing as another cola, it rebranded as the Uncola. The J. Walter Thompson Agency brought in Trinidadian actor Jeffrey Holder, whose deep voice and infectious laugh made the spots unforgettable. The visual style was psychedelic, borrowing from counterculture aesthetics that cola brands were too buttoned up to touch. Sales climbed, and 7-Up rose to the third best-selling soft drink in the country. Behavioral economists call this contrarian positioning, a strategy where a brand defines itself by what it is not. Research in the Journal of Consumer Psychology shows that oppositional framing builds stronger identity than direct comparisons. 7-Up sold rebellion in a green bottle, and the science confirms that is exactly why it worked. If the Uncola campaign proved how smart advertising could build a brand from nothing, what the cigarette industry did with doctors on camera showed how advertising could override common sense on a national scale. R.J. Reynolds ran one of the most insidious campaigns in history for Camel cigarettes. The line was, "More doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette." The survey behind the claim was rigged. Company reps handed out free cartons at a medical convention and then asked physicians which brand they preferred. The ads saturated television throughout the 50s and 60s, and their influence carried into the 70s long after the broadcast ban. In 1984, psychologist Robert Cialdini identified authority as the first of 6 persuasion principles, documenting how humans defer to perceived experts even when the endorsement is manufactured. The Camel Doctor ads are now taught in university psychology courses as a textbook case of authority bias, selling a lethal product to an entire generation. Geritol was a liquid iron supplement that promised to cure what its ads called tired blood. Throughout the 60s and 70s, commercials showed exhausted women dragging through housework until Geritol restored their energy and, by implication, their worth as wives. One infamous spot featured a husband gazing at the camera and saying about his wife, "I think I'll keep her." The FTC had been battling the parent company, J.B. Williams, since 1965 over the claim that iron deficiency caused most everyday fatigue. In 1973, a federal court imposed an $812,000 penalty, the largest fine ever assessed against an advertiser for deceptive claims. Williams kept airing modified versions anyway. Medical research confirmed the FTC was right. Supplemental iron only treats fatigue from a diagnosed deficiency, and most Americans who felt tired were simply overworked and sleeping too little. The toy industry fought harder than any other sector to keep its commercials on Saturday morning television. By the mid-70s, Mattel, Hasbro, and dozens of smaller companies were spending over $600 million a year on ads aimed at kids, many of them for projectile-launching toys and chemistry sets with real chemicals. When the FTC moved to restrict these ads in 1978, the Toy Manufacturers of America hired lobbyists and launched a media blitz calling the commission an overreaching agency with no business telling parents what their kids could watch. Congress responded by stripping the FTC of its authority over children's advertising in 1980. By 1984, under Reagan-era deregulation, the FCC removed all limits on commercial time during children's shows. Within months, programs like Transformers and He-Man appeared on air. They were not cartoons with sponsors. They were 30-minute toy commercials disguised as entertainment. The cereal mascots that survived the FTC battles did not just sell sugar. They rewired how a generation made decisions about food. Neuroscientists studying brand loyalty discovered that kids heavily exposed to character-driven advertising before age 6 formed emotional bonds with those brands that lasted into adulthood, independent of taste or nutritional value. A child who grew up watching Tony the Tiger was measurably more likely to reach for Frosted Flakes at age 35. The cereal companies understood this intuitively decades before the research existed. Their mascots used bright primary colors to capture attention, repetitive jingles to embed memory, and reward-based language to trigger dopamine responses in developing brains. The FTC's KidVid proposal had targeted exactly this mechanism. When it failed, the industry built brand architecture directly into the neural pathways of American kids, and those pathways are still active decades later. The most ambitious promise of the decade came from a perfume bottle. In 1978, Charles of the Ritz launched Enjoli with a jingle that became a cultural flashpoint. A woman in a suit sang that she could bring home the bacon, fry it up in a pan, and never let her husband forget he was a man. The ad collapsed an impossible stack of expectations into 30 seconds and millions of women bought the perfume as though it came with a manual for doing it all. Feminist groups attacked the commercial for packaging exhaustion as empowerment. The campaign faded by the early 80s. Psychologists studying aspirational identity say the Enjoli ad was ahead of its time. It sold a self-image, not a fragrance, and modern research confirms that identity-based advertising creates the strongest purchase motivation of any known technique. Wilson Bryan Key did not stop at Gilbey's Gin. After Subliminal Seduction became a bestseller, he published 3 more books throughout the 70s claiming hidden sexual imagery was embedded in ads for Ritz crackers, Howard Johnson's restaurants, and even the $5 bill. He appeared on talk shows, lectured at universities, and convinced a generation that advertisers were running a mass psychological operation through invisible messages. The industry publicly mocked him. Privately, agencies were less sure. Internal memos from major firms show creative directors debating whether the techniques could work and whether the controversy was generating sales. The FCC's 1973 ruling banned subliminal methods on the airwaves, but nothing prevented them in print or packaging. The loophole stayed open for decades. Modern priming research has since confirmed that subtle visual cues consumers do not consciously register can shift brand preference by measurable margins. While most 70s advertisers were shouting louder and spending bigger, the ghost of one campaign from the previous decade was quietly changing everything. Volkswagen's Think Small ad, created by Doyle Dane Bernbach in 1959, had been pulled from heavy rotation by the early 70s. But its influence was everywhere. The ad broke every rule. Small photo, white space, honest copy that called the car ugly. No claims of luxury or speed. Consumers loved it. By mid-decade, a wave of brands were stripping away exaggeration and replacing it with directness. Cognitive psychologists now call this cognitive fluency, the principle that messages requiring less effort to process feel more trustworthy. Think Small proved that brutal honesty could outperform the loudest pitch in the room. Advertising textbooks still call it the most influential ad of the 20th century. Beer companies in the 70s ran television ads during programs millions of kids watched, and no regulator raised a hand. Schlitz, Budweiser, and Miller placed spots during afternoon sports, early evening variety shows, and holiday specials families viewed together. The ads showed dads cracking open cans at backyard barbecues while their sons and daughters played nearby. Beer was presented as natural to family life as lemonade. No federal rule restricted when alcohol ads could air, and the industry had no voluntary code-limiting placement during family programming. It stayed that way for the entire decade. Addiction researchers studying brand imprinting found that kids repeatedly exposed to alcohol advertising before age 10 developed significantly more favorable attitudes toward drinking by adolescence. The cheerful images of fathers and cold beer were not just marketing to adults. They were planting warmth around a product in young minds with no context for what it does to the body. Miles Laboratories ran an Alka-Seltzer spot in 1972 that opened with a man lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, groaning, "I can't believe I ate the whole thing." His wife responded flatly, without sympathy. The ad was absurd, relatable, and instantly quotable. America repeated the line for years. An earlier campaign had produced the jingle, "Plop, plop, fizz, fizz, oh, what a relief it is." And together, the two spots made Alka-Seltzer the answer to every American's overindulgence. What made the approach unusual was its honesty about human weakness. Instead of a healthy family at breakfast, it showed a man who had eaten himself into misery. Advertising researchers now point to these campaigns as early proof that humor outperforms fear in selling health products. A study in the Journal of Advertising found humorous ads are recalled at rates 30% higher than serious ones. Miles Laboratories figured this out decades before the data caught up. The party was over at 11:59 on the night of January 1st, 1971, when the last cigarette commercial ever broadcast on American television aired during a break on NBC's Tonight Show. It was a 60-second spot for Virginia Slims. Philip Morris had designed the brand to target women, wrapping the campaign in the language of feminist liberation. "You've come a long way, baby," ran alongside sepia-toned images of women being scolded for smoking in earlier eras, contrasted with modern confident women lighting up as an act of freedom. By the time the band silenced the campaign, lung cancer rates among American women had already begun climbing. Between 1950 and 1970, female lung cancer deaths nearly tripled. Philip Morris internal documents show executives tracked those numbers and kept targeting women through print ads for decades after. Criticizing the brand meant appearing to criticize women's liberation itself, and Philip Morris counted on exactly that. The most expensive ad of 1971 nearly collapsed before a frame was filmed. Bill Backer, creative director at McCann Erickson, scribbled, "I'd like to buy the world a Coke" on a napkin during a layover in Shannon, Ireland, after watching stranded passengers bond over bottles of soda. Coca-Cola approved a $100,000 budget, nearly double the average commercial cost. Rain canceled the shoot at the cliffs of Dover. The crew relocated to Rome, cast over 1,000 young people from more than 20 countries, and spent 2.5 days filming before the money ran out. Coca-Cola received more than 100,000 letters after it aired. The jingle became a standalone hit single. Neuroscience research into prosocial emotion has shown that ads evoking communal belonging activate the brain's reward circuits more powerfully than any other emotional trigger. Backer's napkin idea sold connection, not soda, and the brain treats that feeling like a basic need. Quaker Oats released a commercial for Life cereal in 1972 that ran continuously for 13 years without a single edit, making it the longest-running ad in American television history. The setup was 3 brothers at a kitchen table, 2 older ones pushing cereal toward a picky toddler named Mikey, betting he would reject it. He ate it. The line, "He likes it. Hey, Mikey," became one of the most repeated phrases in households across the country. The spot was never pulled, never banned, and never drew FTC scrutiny, making it an anomaly in a decade when regulators were questioning nearly every food ad on the air. Psychologists explain its longevity through authentic social proof. The ad used realistic child behavior rather than scripted enthusiasm, and research shows consumers trust reactions they perceive as genuine far more than celebrity endorsements. Quaker Oats stumbled into a formula the rest of the industry took decades to replicate. The national lead company ran cheerful advertisements for its Dutch Boy brand well into the early 1970s, showing a smiling cartoon boy holding a bucket of bright paint. The ads promised durability and beauty for your home. What they did not mention was that lead paint chips tasted sweet, and kids across America were peeling them off walls and eating them. The industry had known about lead poisoning since the 1920s. A study published in 1943 documented brain damage and cognitive decline in young ones exposed to lead-based coatings, yet manufacturers kept advertising the product as safe for use in nurseries and bedrooms. The Lead-Based Paint Poisoning Prevention Act passed in 1971, and the Consumer Product Safety Commission banned lead in household paint in 1978. By then, millions of homes had already been coated. CDC data from the late 70s showed that 88% of American kids under 5 had blood lead levels above what is now considered dangerous. Every one of those Dutch Boy ads was selling poison with a smile. Johns Manville, the largest asbestos manufacturer in the country, ran product advertisements throughout the 1970s promoting asbestos insulation as fireproof, affordable, and safe for every American home. The company's internal documents told a different story. Memos dating back to the 1930s showed that executives knew asbestos fibers caused lung disease and cancer. Company doctors examined workers, found scarring in their lungs, and management buried the results. Outside the factory walls, asbestos was woven into ceiling tiles, floor adhesives, pipe wrap, and brake pads, all of it advertised with images of happy families and warm, well-insulated houses. The EPA began regulating the material in 1973, but a full ban did not come for decades. Johns Manville filed for bankruptcy in 1982, drowning in lawsuits. Over $5 billion has been paid from the resulting trust fund, and claims are still being processed today. If asbestos killed in silence behind the walls, DDT was sprayed out in the open while the cameras rolled. Television and print ads for DDT-based pesticides ran well into the early 1970s, showing suburban families spraying their lawns, their gardens, and their kitchen counters with products containing the chemical. The ads promised a bug-free home and a healthier life. Rachel Carson had published Silent Spring in 1962, documenting how DDT accumulated in the food chain, thinned the eggshells of birds, and concentrated in human tissue. The chemical industry attacked her credibility, funding campaigns that called her hysterical and unscientific. DDT advertising continued for another decade. The EPA finally banned it in 1972, and every environmental prediction Carson made was eventually confirmed. DDT is still found in the blood of Americans born decades after the ban, passed through breast milk, and stored in fat tissue. Nestlé ran advertising campaigns in developing nations throughout the 70s promoting infant formula as modern and superior to breastfeeding. Sales representatives dressed as nurses visited hospitals in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, handing out free samples to new mothers. The strategy was calculated. Once a mother stopped breastfeeding and her milk dried up, she became dependent on the formula. In communities without clean water, mothers mixed the powder with contaminated supplies. Babies died from diarrhea and malnutrition at rates that alarmed the World Health Organization. In 1977, a global boycott of Nestlé products began, one of the largest consumer protests in history. UNICEF estimated over 1 million infant deaths per year were linked to unsafe bottle feeding promoted by formula companies. The WHO adopted an international code restricting breast milk substitute marketing in 1981. Nestlé agreed to follow it only after years of sustained global pressure. The federal government spent millions on anti-drug public service announcements throughout the 70s, running grim television spots showing teenagers spiraling into addiction after a single joint or pill. The ads were designed to terrify young viewers away from experimentation. They had the opposite effect. Psychologists studying reactance theory discovered that fear-based messaging aimed at adolescents often increases curiosity rather than discouraging behavior. Teenagers interpret heavy-handed warnings as proof that the forbidden substance must be powerful and exciting. A series of studies published in the 80s found that kids exposed to the most aggressive anti-drug campaigns were no less likely to try drugs, and in some demographics were slightly more likely to experiment. The advertising community called it the boomerang effect. The government kept funding the same approach into the 2000s before research forced a shift toward evidence-based messaging that acknowledged complexity instead of hammering fear alone. In 1971, the FTC established the Advertising Substantiation Doctrine, requiring companies to hold reasonable evidence supporting their claims before running an ad. The ruling emerged from the Pfizer case, where the commission challenged a pain reliever's unproven superiority claims. Before this rule, advertisers could say virtually anything on television and face no consequences unless someone proved the claim false after the fact. The burden of proof had rested on the consumer, not the company. The substantiation doctrine reversed that permanently. Every advertiser now had to produce evidence before an ad went to air. The pharmaceutical, food, and automotive industries scrambled to comply. Dozens of campaigns were pulled overnight. Marketing researchers consider it the single most important regulatory shift in American advertising history, forcing the industry to invest in actual product development rather than relying on storytelling to sell products that could not back up their promises. After the FCC lifted restrictions on children's television advertising in 1984, something unprecedented happened. Entire animated series were created by toy companies specifically as vehicles to sell action figures. Hasbro produced Transformers and G.I. Joe. Mattel funded He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. The shows were developed by marketing departments, not writers or educators, and every episode was built around products already on store shelves. The characters were the toys, the stories were the commercials. There was no separation between content and advertising because the content was the ad. The FTC had tried to prevent exactly this with its 1978 proposal. Consumer advocates called the programs a betrayal of childhood. Ratings were enormous. A generation of kids grew up watching shows engineered from the first frame to make them want things, and the techniques embedded in those programs, scarcity, collectability, tribal identity, remain the foundation of how products are marketed to young audiences worldwide. Coca-Cola's 1979 Super Bowl commercial almost never made it to air. The ad showed a limping, exhausted Mean Joe Green walking through a stadium tunnel after a game when a young boy offered him a bottle of Coke. Green drank the whole thing, and as the kid turned to walk away, the football player called out and tossed him his jersey. The boy's face lit up. McCann Erickson fought to keep the concept alive after Coca-Cola executives questioned whether a 30-second spot built on silence and a single human interaction could compete with the flashy production values of the era. Neuroscientists studying the ad decades later found it triggers mirror neuron activity and oxytocin release, the same biological response humans have during genuine acts of kindness between strangers. It cost almost nothing compared to the Hilltop campaign. No music, no crowd, no helicopter shots. One tired athlete, one kid, and one cold bottle, and it remains among the most emotionally powerful advertisements ever broadcast. Lawn dart ads showing children playing unsupervised filled television screens in the 1980s, presenting the heavy, sharp-pointed toys as the ultimate backyard fun for families. These commercials featured kids running barefoot across grass, tossing metal-tipped darts into the air, and cheering as they landed near plastic target rings. Parents watched these ads and saw wholesome outdoor activity, the kind of simple summer entertainment that kept children happy. Nobody questioned whether launching weighted projectiles near playing children might be dangerous, because the commercials made it look effortless and safe. The ads showed laughter, competition, and family bonding, never depicting the accidents emergency rooms documented across the country. When a child died from a lawn dart injury and grieving parents demanded action, regulators finally stepped in. The product was banned entirely, and the commercials that once made it look innocent vanished from the airwaves. Today, lawn darts remain one of the clearest examples of how advertising can shape perception, making danger look like harmless fun until tragedy forces everyone to see the truth. The Energizer Bunny became an advertising phenomenon by doing something brilliantly simple, interrupting fake commercials with a drumming pink rabbit that just kept going and going. These parody ads pretended to sell everything from wine coolers to hemorrhoid cream before the bunny crashed through, batteries blazing. The humor was layered and self-aware, poking fun at advertising itself while being one of the most effective ad campaigns of the decade. Kids loved the unexpected chaos, parents appreciated the clever writing, and everyone remembered the bunny long after forgetting what batteries he was selling. The fake commercials were often funnier than real ones, satirizing pharmaceutical ads, perfume spots, and infomercials with pitch-perfect absurdity. But some parody commercials pushed boundaries that regulators deemed inappropriate. Certain spoofed products touched on adult themes, and the line between satire and endorsement became blurry enough to draw complaints. A handful of edgier spots were pulled from rotation, making them rare treasures of 80s advertising. Those banned versions still circulate among collectors who remember when the bunny mocked everything. Sometimes you just feel that life is too much and all you want is a burger. The McDonald's "You deserve a break today" commercial from the 70s made all of us feel like we could say, "Yeah, I've earned this."
You deserve a break today, yeah.
It wasn't just about fast food, it was about self-care with fries. In the commercial, people were smiling and eating McDonald's food after they had come from work. The jingle is catchy and hard to forget, like ketchup stuck on the fries. It convinced you that a Big Mac was the ultimate prize for growing up. Here's a fun nugget. This campaign assisted McDonald's in their change from being known as a quick meal place to becoming a family restaurant. The ads were so good that they have been remade several times, but there's no substitute for the first. Well, I must confess, each time I am at the drive-thru, I sing this song in my mind. It's practically Pavlovian. And to be quite frank, they were not entirely wrong. It's nice to be able to sink your teeth into a cheeseburger you didn't have to cook yourself after a long day at work. The campaign may be gone, but the message remains. Treat yourself. And if that treat happens to come with a Happy Meal toy, even better. Alcohol ads featuring pregnant women socializing appeared with surprising frequency in the 1980s, showing expectant mothers enjoying wine at dinner parties and relaxing with cocktails as if pregnancy changed nothing. These commercials reflected a time when medical guidance about alcohol and pregnancy remained vague and largely ignored by advertisers seeking the widest possible audience. Women saw themselves represented in ads that normalized drinking throughout all stages of life, including pregnancy. Nobody questioned the imagery because doctors often downplayed the risks, and advertisers followed cultural norms rather than scientific caution. Families watched these commercials without alarm, absorbing the message that a glass of wine posed no real danger. It was only later, when research firmly established the connection between alcohol during pregnancy and developmental harm, that outrage arrived. Regulators banned any advertising depicting pregnant women drinking, and warning labels became mandatory on all alcohol products. Today, those old commercials feel almost unbelievable, relics of an era when advertising priorities overshadowed the safety of the most vulnerable. Clara Peller became an unlikely superstar in the 1980s when she squinted at a tiny hamburger patty and demanded to know where the beef was hiding. The Wendy's commercials featuring this elderly woman and her exasperated catchphrase became instant sensations, spawning merchandise, political references, and parodies that proved how deeply the phrase penetrated American culture. The humor came from Clara's genuine frustration, delivered with authentic annoyance that viewers could not help but laugh at. Kids repeated the line constantly, parents used it to complain about anything disappointing, and Clara herself became a celebrity interviewed on talk shows. The original commercials were harmless, but Clara's subsequent appearance in a competing pasta sauce commercial violated her Wendy's contract and sparked a legal battle that ended her advertising career. Wendy's pulled the campaign, Clara faded from public view, and the phrase lingered as a cultural artifact with a complicated legacy. Regulators also scrutinized the ads for misleading claims about competitor sizes. Today, those commercials remind us how quickly advertising gold can turn controversial. Elsie the cow was not just any mascot, she was the mascot.
Look.
Beauregard. Oh, Mom.
During the 60s, Borden's dairy products commercial made drinking milk and consuming cheese a family affair because of Elsie. Yes, a cartoon cow had more personality than half the television personalities of her generation. I recall seeing Elsie on everything from the milk cartons to cheese wrappings when I was at my grandma's. The commercials depicted her as a jovial, humorous cow with an ability to make people crave dairy products. Fun fact, Elsie first appeared in 1936 and was chosen as one of the greatest advertising characters of all time. Real quick, if you're loving this content as much as we loved making it, hit subscribe to stay connected and help us reach even more amazing folks like you. The ads were very family-oriented, and the portrayal of Elsie as the perfect mother who just so happened to be a cow was done in good taste. They made milk and cheese seem like something you could crave, which, let's face it, you can. Though Borden's is still in existence, Elsie is not the celebrity she used to be. But those old commercials? They're pure nostalgia gold. If you ever come across vintage Elsie merchandise, get it. It is a piece of advertising memorabilia. Now, every time I pour milk or slice cheese, it reminds me of Elsie the cow. She was not merely selling dairy, she was selling experiences. And let's be honest, dairy just tastes better when it comes with a side of cute cow imagery. Diet pill ads with unproven weight loss claims flooded television screens in the 1980s, offering miracle transformations with nothing more than a bottle of capsules. These commercials showed before and after photos so dramatic they seemed impossible, featuring people who claimed to have lost dozens of pounds without exercise or dieting. The pills promised to melt fat, boost metabolism, and reshape bodies while viewers slept. Women especially targeted by these ads believed the testimonials because they came from people who looked like neighbors sharing success stories. Nobody questioned whether the claims were true or whether ingredients were safe. Parents kept these bottles in medicine cabinets alongside vitamins, trusting that anything sold on national television must have passed some kind of approval. When regulators finally demanded clinical evidence for weight loss claims, most of these products vanished overnight. The ads that once promised effortless transformation became symbols of an era that sold hope without proof. Today, strict guidelines prevent such bold claims from reaching the airwaves, but the memory of those miracle pills lingers uncomfortably. High Karate aftershave commercials promised something no grooming product had ever dared guarantee: that wearing this cologne would make men so irresistible they would need self-defense training to fend off admirers. The ads showed ordinary guys splashing on the aftershave and immediately being tackled, grabbed, and chased by beautiful women who could not control their desire. Each commercial ended with the absurd punchline, warning viewers to be careful because High Karate was simply too powerful. Kids found the concept hilarious, watching grown men karate chop through crowds of swooning women like action heroes in a perfume commercial. Parents chuckled at the exaggerated premise, recognizing harmless fun that nobody could take seriously. The humor worked because it leaned so hard into the ridiculous that it became a parody of masculine fantasies. But as advertising standards evolved, regulators grew uncomfortable with the implication that women would lose self-control around men wearing the right scent. The commercials were quietly retired and High Karate faded into obscurity. Today, those ads feel like relics of a time when absurd gender dynamics could be played for laughs. Pharmaceutical ads without side effect warnings ran constantly in the 1980s, painting every pill and syrup as a simple solution to life's discomforts. These commercials showed smiling families, active grandparents, and relieved workers returning to their lives after a single dose. The narrator spoke in warm, reassuring tones, promising fast relief without ever mentioning what could go wrong. Viewers trusted these ads because medicine was supposed to help, not harm, and the companies seemed too established to mislead anyone. Parents gave children cold remedies and pain relievers without reading fine print that barely existed. Nobody imagined that pills making their headaches disappear might carry risks no one mentioned on television. When regulations finally required drug companies to disclose side effects, the change was dramatic. Commercials suddenly filled with rapid warnings about nausea, dizziness, and far worse possibilities. Looking back, it is startling how many families medicated themselves based on commercials that told only half the story. Those old ads remain a reminder that silence can be just as misleading as any spoken claim. Crazy Eddie electronics store commercials were an assault on the senses in the best possible way, featuring a fast-talking pitchman who screamed at the camera like his life depended on selling stereos. His catchphrase became legendary overnight, shouted at such volume and speed that it felt like the commercial might explode. The ads promised prices so insane that competing with them was apparently impossible, and viewers believed they were getting deals that defied economics. Kids memorized the jingle, parents quoted it at dinner tables, and the sheer manic energy made these commercials impossible to ignore, even if you had no intention of buying anything. The humor was unintentional, but undeniable, because watching a grown man lose his mind over discounted televisions was comedy gold. People tuned in just to see what outrageous claim would come next. But behind the scenes, the real Crazy Eddie was running a massive fraud scheme that eventually sent him to prison. The commercials vanished once the scandal broke, and regulators cracked down on deceptive pricing claims that had fueled the campaign. Today, those screaming ads feel both hilarious and unsettling. Picture this: a hill, a rainbow of people with glasses full of Coke, and a tune so irresistible that it made the world think that a soda can bring everyone together. The Coca-Cola commercial that went on air in 1971, "I'd like to buy the world a Coke," was not just a commercial, but was a phenomenon.
I'd like to buy the world a Coke and keep it company.
It's like the anthem for anybody who has ever drunk a Coke and then thought to himself, you know what this could do? It could solve world peace. The ad had a group of singers singing about harmony and happiness, all holding bottles of the soft drink. Fun fact, The song was so successful that it was released as a single and even reached the charts on the Billboard. My mom had it on vinyl, and I'm sure she still does, though I haven't seen it in years. Here's the kicker. It almost didn't happen. Rain nearly derailed the shoot in Italy, but when the sun was out, the impossible seemed possible. Coca-Cola got it right on the head with this one. They touched on something that is timeless. It makes me feel like I want to get a Coke, invite my friends, and sing about whatever. The jingle is no longer aired, but the message it sought to pass on to the public is timeless. Let's all just chill with a Coke. Is it even possible to drink soda if you don't hum this tune? Tanning bed ads promoting safe sun alternatives ran frequently in the 1980s, promising golden skin without the risks of outdoor exposure. These commercials featured glowing models stepping out of sleek machines, looking bronzed, healthy, and impossibly confident. The message was clear. Tanning beds offered control, convenience, and beauty on demand. Salons marketed themselves as wellness destinations, and families saw nothing wrong with teenagers booking sessions before prom. Parents believed the advertisements because they seemed scientific, using words like controlled UV exposure that made artificial tanning sound medicinal. Nobody imagined these machines could damage skin faster than the sun they claimed to replace. When researchers linked tanning beds to dramatically increase skin cancer risks, the advertising landscape shifted overnight. Regulators banned claims of safety and health benefits that had filled these commercials. The sleek tanning bed became a symbol of danger rather than beauty. Today, it is chilling to think how many people trusted ads promising glow without consequence, unaware that the machines carried risks nobody mentioned until it was too late. Miller Lite commercials turned a simple beer argument into one of the most entertaining ad campaigns of the 1980s, featuring retired athletes and celebrities screaming at each other over whether the beer tasted great or was less filling. The debates escalated into absurd physical confrontations, barroom brawls, and comedic standoffs that made choosing a side feel like the most important decision anyone could make. Kids imitated the arguments on playgrounds, parents quoted the catchphrases at parties, and the campaign became a cultural touchstone that transcended beer advertising. The humor worked because the stakes were deliberately low while the passion was cranked impossibly high. Watching famous athletes nearly come to blows over a beer slogan was comedy gold. But some commercials featured scenarios regulators found problematic, including depictions of drinking that implied intoxication was funny rather than dangerous. The more aggressive spots were quietly retired as alcohol advertising guidelines tightened. Today, those classic debates feel like relics of a time when beer commercials could be genuinely hilarious without worrying about the message they sent. If you have ever sung My Bologna Has a First Name, it's OSCAR, you have been the victim of one of the most effective examples of food jingle brainwashing.
My bologna has a first name. It's OSCAR.
This 1973 Oscar Mayer ad didn't just sell bologna. It made lunch meat the star of the sandwich. The commercial was of a cute little boy sitting on a dock with his sandwich and spelling the name of the brand like the alphabet. It was adorable, memorable, and, to be quite honest, brilliant. It is quite funny how a simple bologna can be so adorable. Fun fact, the jingle was composed in less than an hour, and then it became popular. Oscar Mayer even encouraged kids to sing it and made every lunchbox a stage to perform on. My cousins and I used to sing it like we were in a competition with American Idol. I must admit that even if you don't like processed meats, you have to appreciate this advert. It made bologna trendy, or as trendy as lunch meat can be. And let's not forget the second verse. My bologna has a second name. It's Mayer. It's funny and catchy. Today, it is just a reminder of the past that commercials were jingles and sandwiches were the norm. Every time I hear it, I find myself again in front of the refrigerator door, wanting a bologna sandwich. Sugary cereal ads claiming health benefits filled Saturday morning airwaves in the 1980s with animated mascots, catchy jingles, and bold promises that made parents believe breakfast could be nutritious and fun. These commercials showed children bouncing with energy, excelling at sports, and outsmarting their friends, all supposedly thanks to a bowl of sugar-coated flakes. Phrases like "part of a complete breakfast" sat beside images of toast and juice, making cereal seem essential rather than optional. Parents trusted these claims because they came from brands feeding families for generations. Nobody questioned whether a product loaded with sugar could actually fuel growing bodies. Children begged for the cereals they saw on television, and parents obliged, believing the advertisements spoke truth. When nutritional research caught up with marketing, regulators began cracking down on misleading health claims aimed at young audiences. Today, those exaggerated promises would never survive federal scrutiny. The cereal aisle still sparkles with colorful boxes, but the wild claims of the 80s have been quietly retired, reminding us how easily trust can be manufactured. Joe Camel strolled onto screens in the 1980s with the swagger of a cartoon character who had wandered out of a jazz club and into every commercial break. The dromedary with the oversized snout, leather jacket, and perpetually cool demeanor became the face of Camel cigarettes in a campaign so slick it barely felt like advertising. Kids recognized Joe faster than most politicians, and studies confirmed children identified the cartoon Camel as easily as Mickey Mouse. The commercials showed Joe playing pool, riding motorcycles, and hanging out with attractive people who seemed thrilled to be near him. The humor was subtle but effective, turning a cigarette brand into something fun and impossibly stylish. Parents laughed at the absurdity of a cartoon camel living a cooler life than anyone they knew, but health advocates were horrified, arguing that a cartoon mascot was a deliberate strategy to hook young audiences before they understood smoking dangers. Lawsuits piled up, outrage intensified, and regulators forced the campaign into retirement. Today, Joe Camel stands as one of the most notorious examples of advertising that crossed a line nobody should have needed to draw. It's time to discuss the fruit that has an entire song dedicated to it. Chiquita bananas weren't just fruit, they were stars, thanks to their Carmen Miranda-inspired jingle.
Chiquita banana, and I've come to say bananas have to ripen in a certain way.
I'm Chiquita Banana, and I've come to say, don't deny it. You just sang that in your head. The adverts included a cartoon banana with a hat filled with other fruits to show us how to handle and consume bananas. Do not store them in the refrigerator, they advised. Let them ripen just right. It was like having a chef with a Broadway voice cook for me and explain what he was doing at the same time. Chiquita first introduced this tropical spectacle in 1944, and the campaign was so good that the song was played on the radio. The banana mascot had thus evolved into an American symbol by the 60s. My family adopted all of those lessons. No bananas in the fridge at any given time. The beauty of these ads was that they made the mundane and the prosaic look glamorous. Bananas became a luxury, entertaining, and a must-have in each breakfast. And who didn't want to join the chorus? Today's Chiquita logo is still in use, but the banana that sings is no more. However, for those of us who are old enough to remember this ad, there is always music playing in our heads when we are peeling a banana. Come on, you just ran your fingers over the skin of a banana to tell if it is ripe or not, right? Thanks, Chiquita. Beer commercials during daytime family programming were a familiar sight in the 1980s, slipping between cartoons, sporting events, and holiday specials as if alcohol belonged alongside everything families watched. These ads featured laughing friends, summer barbecues, and celebrations that made drinking look like the natural reward for a day well spent. Children absorbed these messages alongside cereal jingles and toy promotions, learning to associate beer brands with happiness before understanding what alcohol did. Parents rarely noticed how often these commercials appeared during hours meant for young viewers, because the line between adult and family content barely existed. Nobody questioned why a product meant for adults was marketed heavily when children were watching. The ads normalized drinking in ways that shaped attitudes for an entire generation. When advocacy groups pushed for restrictions, networks slowly moved alcohol advertising to later time slots. Today, strict guidelines prevent beer commercials from airing during children's programming. But the memories of those sunny ads still linger, a reminder that advertising once reached audiences it was never supposed to influence. Winston cigarettes sponsoring the Flintstones seems like a fever dream now. But in the early days, those animated commercials were as real as bedrock itself. Fred and Barney would take breaks from their prehistoric antics to light up Winston's, puffing contentedly while praising the smooth taste. The scenes showed cartoon characters sneaking away from chores, hiding from their wives, and sharing cigarettes like passing around a secret that made adulthood bearable. Kids at home saw their favorite animated heroes treating smoking as perfectly normal, even desirable. Parents laughed at the situations because they recognized themselves in Fred and Barney dodging responsibilities. The humor was situational, relying on classic domestic comedy tropes that happened to feature cigarettes as casual props. Nobody imagined these ads would become infamous examples of targeting children through trusted characters. When cigarette advertising on television was banned, these Flintstones commercials became shocking artifacts of an era that mixed cartoons and tobacco without hesitation. They remain banned and rarely shown except as cautionary examples of how advertising operated without ethical boundaries. You know the feeling, right? You have eaten to the point where you can barely look at the plate and think to yourself, why did I do this? Alka-Seltzer's, I can't believe I ate the whole thing.
I can't believe I ate that whole thing.
Oh, well, I heard that before.
Commercial was just the kind of appeal that cracked that nerve. It didn't just sell antacids, it made us laugh at our own gluttony. One of the ads was a man complaining about how much he ate while his wife looked at him from the side. Here came Alka-Seltzer, the effervescent remedy for the crime committed against the kitchen. The tagline became so famous that it became a part of the Pop Culture Hall of Fame. Well, my dad uses it to this very day during the Thanksgiving celebration. Were you aware that this particular campaign is considered to be one of the most effective in the history of advertising? It was first aired in 1972, and the company's sales of Alka-Seltzer multiplied 2 times. It turned into a phrase for overindulging in food and showed that nothing sells like comedy and relatability. Each time I come across those tiny effervescent tablets, this advert pops into my mind. It is a message of hope for the stomach. No matter how much pie one takes, there is always a possibility. Alka-Seltzer didn't just sell a product. It gave us a catchphrase for life's tastiest mistakes. Toy commercials with exaggerated action sequences dominated children's programming in the 1980s, transforming plastic figures into epic heroes battling across landscapes that existed only in studio lighting. Kids watched in awe as action figures flew through the air, vehicles raced at impossible speeds, and playsets transformed into battlefields that looked nothing like what waited inside the box. The commercials used camera angles, sound effects, and dramatic music to create excitement no living room could replicate. Children begged for toys they had seen perform miracles on screen, only to discover that gravity and reality worked very differently at home. Parents spent money on products that never matched the promise, and disappointment became part of the holiday morning ritual. Nobody questioned whether these ads crossed a line, because exaggeration was simply how toys were sold. When regulators finally demanded disclaimers like "assembly required" and "sold separately," the fantasy started crumbling. Today, toy ads must show products as they actually perform. Those old commercials remain a reminder of how easily wonder can be manufactured and sold. Bill Cosby selling Jell-O pudding pops in the 1980s was advertising synergy at its peak, combining America's favorite television dad with America's favorite frozen treat in commercials that felt like extensions of family warmth. The ads showed Cosby mugging for the camera, making faces, and delivering signature comedic timing while surrounded by children reaching for pudding pops. Parents trusted him implicitly. Kids adored his playful energy. And the commercials sold millions of desserts by associating the product with wholesome fun. The humor came from Cosby's natural charisma, his ability to make even a simple frozen snack feel like an event worth celebrating. Every commercial reinforced the idea that pudding pops meant happiness, togetherness, and innocent joy. For decades, these ads remained beloved examples of celebrity endorsement done perfectly. But when criminal allegations against Cosby surfaced and convictions followed, Every commercial featuring his face became impossible to air. Jell-O severed ties, and the ads were pulled permanently. Today, those commercials exist in a strange limbo, banned not for their content, but for the man who made them famous. They sold you the future and hid the cost. Like and subscribe if any of these brought something back.